My name is Martha. I'm 65 years old, and I never thought I would live to see the day when my own family would leave me lying helpless on the floor, refusing to take me to the hospital. But that day came. I remember the sound of my hip hitting the wooden floor, the sharp pain that shot through my body like fire, and the tears that I couldn't hold back. I screamed for help, but when they finally came, they stood there, arms crossed, faces cold. "You'll be fine," my daughter-in-law said, rolling her eyes as if I was faking. "You're always so dramatic, Mom," my son added, his voice flat, almost annoyed. My body shook with fear. I couldn't move. I couldn't stand. I knew something was broken, but they didn't care. They refused to drive me to the hospital, refused to even call 911. And in that moment, as I lay there in agony on the floor of my own house, I realized something. They thought they had won. They thought I was weak, powerless, and at their mercy. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what I was capable of. So I took them to court. And in the end, I left them with nothing but debt. Now, before I tell you how I did it and how everything unfolded, you need to understand how we got here. Because betrayal like this doesn't happen overnight. It builds piece by piece, heartbreak by heartbreak. It started years before the fall. I raised my son, Daniel, all by myself. His father left when he was just 2 years old, and I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over his head. I didn't complain. I didn't cry in front of him. I just kept pushing because he was my reason to live. He was my everything. And when he graduated high school, I was the proudest mother alive. I thought I had done it. I thought I had given him a better life. But then he met her. Her name was Jessica. At first, I welcomed her with open arms. She was pretty, polite, and seemed to care for him. But over time, things began to change. Suddenly, Daniel called less. He visited less. And when he did visit, Jessica was always right there, whispering in his ear, her smile sharp like a knife. I didn't see it right away, but slowly, she turned him against me. It started with small things, rolling her eyes when I offered advice, making jokes about me being old-fashioned, convincing Daniel that I was too controlling. Then it became bigger things, like discouraging him from coming over or making him feel guilty if he spent time with me instead of her. And Daniel, he changed. He wasn't the sweet boy I had raised anymore. He was colder, sharper. He spoke to me like I was a burden, like I was some old woman dragging him down. And no matter how much I tried to remind him of all the years I sacrificed for him, it was like he had forgotten everything. Still, I stayed patient. I told myself love would bring him back to me. I told myself it was just a phase. But I was wrong. By the time I turned 65, I was living with them. Jessica had convinced Daniel that I was too fragile to live on my own, and that I needed supervision. I should have known better. It wasn't about helping me, it was about control. In their house, I was treated like a stranger. My room was small, tucked away in the back. I had no say in anything, not even what I ate for dinner. If I cooked, they complained. If I cleaned, they said I was in the way. It was as if I didn't exist, except when they needed me to babysit their kids for free. And I did, because I love my grandchildren. They were innocent in all of this, but deep down I was hurt, broken, betrayed by my own son. And then came the night of the fall. I remember it so clearly. I had been carrying a basket of laundry when my foot slipped on the polished floor. My body twisted and I went down hard. The pain was instant, sharp, unbearable. I cried out, "Help. Please help me." The sound of footsteps came, but instead of concern, I saw annoyance in their eyes. Jessica folded her arms. "We're not wasting money on hospital bills for you. You'll be fine." Daniel stood behind her, silent, but I saw his face. He agreed with her. I begged. I cried. I told them something was broken, but they didn't care. They left me there, groaning on the floor for hours. And as I lay there, every second stretching into eternity, my mind shifted. The heartbreak hardened into something else. I realized they didn't love me. Not anymore. And if they didn't love me, I had no reason to keep protecting them. They thought I was powerless, but I wasn't. I still had one thing they didn't expect, my willpower. And I was going to use it. I was going to make sure they regretted every cruel word, every selfish decision, every cold look. Because no one betrays me and gets away with it. But how does a 65-year-old woman, broken on the floor, fight back against her own son and his ruthless wife? That's where my story truly begins. The pain didn't stop. It pulsed through me, every breath stabbing my side, every twitch of my leg like fire burning through bone. Hours passed, and I lay there on the floor of that cold house, waiting for someone to show me a shred of kindness. But no kindness came. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the TV in the living room. I could hear the muffled laughter of some sitcom, Jessica's voice chiming in with her own sharp laugh, as if nothing had happened. My son's low voice drifted down the hall. Neither of them came back to check on me. I knew then, in my bones, that they were waiting me out. They thought if they ignored me long enough, I'd stop complaining, crawl to my room, and shut up. But my body wouldn't let me move. I couldn't crawl. I couldn't even sit up without crying out in pain. So I stayed there, staring at the ceiling, every tick of the clock drilling into my mind. When midnight came, I was still on that floor. I whispered prayers to myself. I prayed for strength, for relief, for someone to help me. But no angel came. No savior walked through the door. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. Finally, I made a decision. If they wouldn't help me, I'd help myself. With trembling hands, I pulled my phone from the pocket of my cardigan. My vision blurred with tears, but I managed to unlock it. The numbers 911 glowed on the screen. My thumb hovered over the call button. But then I froze. If I called, Jessica would explode. She would scream about bills, about wasting money, about embarrassing the family. And Daniel, he wouldn't defend me. He would stand there, silent, letting her words slice me apart. For a moment, I almost gave in to the fear. Almost. Then the pain in my hip roared again, and I remembered who I was. I wasn't some fragile doll they could push around. I had survived divorce, poverty, years of sacrifice. I had raised a son alone against all odds. I pressed the button. The operator's calm voice filled my ear. 911, what's your emergency? My voice shook. I've fallen. I think my hip is broken. I can't move. Please, I need an ambulance. She reassured me, told me help was on the way. Relief washed over me, but only for a second, because the sound of footsteps thundered down the hallway. Jessica burst into the room, her eyes blazing. She had hurt me. What are you doing? She snapped, yanking the phone from my hand. Are you out of your mind? Do you know how much this will cost? I tried to speak, but the operator's faint voice crackled from the phone, asking if I was safe. Jessica hung up. Rage boiled inside me. Give it back. I shouted, louder than I thought possible. For the first time that night, Daniel stepped forward. His face was unreadable. He took the phone from Jessica and looked at me. For a flicker of a moment, I saw the boy I raised, the boy who used to hold my hand when crossing the street, the boy who once cried when I was sick. But that boy was gone. He sighed and put the phone in his pocket. Mom, stop being difficult. You'll be fine. Just sleep it off. Sleep it off. With a broken hip. I felt my heart shatter all over again. But I didn't argue. I went silent. Because in that silence, I was planning. When they finally left me alone, I waited. I listened until their voices faded. Until the house was still again. Then I reached for the only thing left within my power. The landline phone tucked in the corner of the room. Jessica hated that phone, said it was outdated, but I kept it anyway, tucked away like an old secret. With shaking fingers, I dialed 911 again. This time, no one stopped me. Within 20 minutes, the paramedics arrived. Bright lights cut through the darkness. Voices filled with concern replaced the cold silence. Strong arms lifted me gently onto a stretcher. For the first time in hours, I felt human again. But as they carried me out, I caught sight of Jessica standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, her glare like poison. Daniel stood behind her, eyes lowered, ashamed but not enough to speak. I didn't look at them. I didn't say goodbye. I left that house on a stretcher, and in my heart I knew things would never be the same again. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what I already knew. My hip was broken. I would need surgery, weeks of recovery. Physical therapy. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling, I let the truth sink in. My son and his wife had left me to suffer, alone in agony. They had refused to take me to the hospital, refused to even acknowledge my pain. But I wasn't powerless anymore. I had proof, medical records, paramedics who had seen me lying there, untreated, neglected. I had witnesses. And slowly, piece by piece, a plan began to form. At first, it was just a whisper in my mind, a thought I tried to push away. Could I really take my own son to court? Could I really drag my own family through the mud? But then I remembered Jessica's face, Daniel's silence, their refusal to help me, their betrayal. Yes, I could, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every sacrifice I had made. Every night I had gone hungry so Daniel could eat. Every tear I had cried in silence while building a life for him. They had thrown all of that away, and they needed to learn that actions have consequences. I would take them to court, and I would win. But first, I had to survive the surgery. The doctors wheeled me into the operating room, the bright lights blinding. I said a prayer under my breath as the anesthesia pulled me under. When I woke up hours later, groggy and weak, the nurse smiled kindly at me. "The surgery went well," she said. "You're going to recover." Recover. That word became my mantra. I wasn't just going to recover my body. I was going to recover my dignity, my life, my power. But when visiting hours came, no one showed up. Not Daniel. Not Jessica. Not even my grandchildren. My heart ached, but it also hardened. Their absence was my answer. I had no family left. Not really. And so, lying in that hospital bed, I made a vow. When I got out of here, I was going to make them pay. Not out of spite. Not out of cruelty. But because people like them needed to understand that you cannot treat others, especially the ones who love you, with such coldness and walk away untouched. It was no longer about family. It was about justice. The first step was finding someone who would believe me. Someone who would fight for me. That's when I called her. Linda, my oldest friend. The one person I knew I could trust. When she answered the phone and heard my voice, weak and trembling, she didn't hesitate. "Martha? What happened? Tell me everything." And I did. I poured it all out, the fall, the refusal, the humiliation, the ambulance. By the time I finished, Linda was silent, her anger palpable even through the phone. "They left you there," she said finally, her voice sharp. "They refused to help you?" "Oh, honey, they don't know who they're messing with." Her words lit a fire inside me. "You need a lawyer," she continued. "Not just any lawyer. Someone tough. Someone who won't back down." And that was the moment the plan stopped being just a thought. It became real. The lawsuit was coming. But little did I know, taking them to court would uncover secrets I never expected. Dark truths buried under years of lies, and betrayals far deeper than a broken hip. And the first crack in their perfect little world would come sooner than anyone thought. Because while I lay in that hospital bed, healing and planning, Jessica was already making her next move. A move that would change everything. The days in the hospital were long, but they gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The nurses checked on me, spoke to me kindly, and treated me like I mattered. Even though I was in pain, I felt safer there than I had in Daniel's house. But peace doesn't last forever. 3 days after my surgery, Jessica showed up. I was half asleep when I heard the door creak open. At first, I thought it was a nurse, but then I caught the sharp scent of her perfume. Sweet and suffocating, like a mask hiding something rotten underneath. I opened my eyes and saw her standing there, arms folded, eyes scanning the room with contempt. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "you look comfortable." My heart raced. I wanted to sit up straighter, to show her I wasn't afraid, but the pain held me down. Still, I forced myself to look her in the eye. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. She smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives before it pounces. "I just came to make something clear," she said, stepping closer to my bed. "You will not be dragging my family's name through the mud. Do you understand me?" My breath caught in my chest. She knew. Somehow, She knew I was planning something. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied. Oh, please. She rolled her eyes. You think I don't know? You called Linda. You think she wouldn't tell Daniel? You're plotting something, Martha, and I'm here to tell you it won't work. Her voice lowered, her words sharp as knives. If you even try to take us to court, I'll make sure you regret it. Do you understand? You'll lose everything. We'll put you in a home so fast your head will spin. Her words cut deep, but they also lit a fire inside me. A home. She wanted me locked away, out of sight, stripped of everything I had left. I clenched my fists under the blanket. Jessica, I whispered, you already made me lose everything. You and Daniel both. And now you'll see what happens when you push someone too far. Her smile faltered for just a moment. Then she leaned in closer, her voice low and venomous. You're just an old woman, she hissed. No one's going to believe you. Not the court. Not the kids. Not even Daniel. You're nothing. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor. I lay there shaking, my body trembling with both fear and fury. Nothing. That's what she thought I was. That's what she wanted me to believe. But I wasn't nothing. I had survived too much to be erased like that. The moment she left, I picked up the phone and called Linda again. I told her everything. Jessica's visit, her threats, her venom. By the time I finished, Linda was furious. That's it, she said. We're not waiting anymore. Tomorrow, I'm bringing you a lawyer. The next morning, Linda arrived with a man named Mr. Harris. He was older, with silver hair and a sharp suit, but his eyes were kind. He listened quietly as I told him everything, from the fall, to their refusal to help, to Jessica's threats. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Martha, he said slowly, what they did to you isn't just cruel. It's criminal. We can build a case for elder neglect. You have medical records, paramedics, witnesses. And if she really threatened you about a nursing home, that only strengthens your case. I felt a spark of hope. So you believe me? Of course I do, he said firmly. And a jury will too. But this won't be easy. They'll fight back. People like your daughter-in-law. They always do. I nodded. I already knew Jessica wouldn't go down quietly. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I had allies now. Mr. Harris promised to start filing paperwork right away. But he also gave me a warning. Be ready, he said. They're going to try to intimidate you. They'll try to twist the story, make you look weak, senile, unreliable. You'll need to be stronger than ever. I swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if I had that kind of strength left. But then I remembered lying on that floor, broken and ignored, and I knew I had no choice. That night, I dreamed of standing in a courtroom, looking Jessica in the eye as the judge read the verdict. I dreamed of winning, of reclaiming my dignity. But dreams don't prepare you for the storm, because Jessica wasn't sitting idly by. She was already plotting her own revenge. 2 days later, a social worker showed up at my hospital room. She had a clipboard in her hand and a forced smile on her face. Mrs. Miller, she said kindly, I just need to ask you a few questions. It's about your ability to live independently. My stomach dropped. Jessica, she had called them. I answered every question as best I could, fighting to keep my voice steady. I explained how I had been caring for myself before the fall, how I cooked, cleaned, managed my finances. But I could see the doubt in the social worker's eyes. She kept writing things down, nodding politely, but I knew what this was. Jessica was trying to paint me as unfit. She wanted to take away my independence, to lock me away before I even had a chance to fight back. The thought made me sick. When the social worker finally left, I broke down in tears. For the first time since this all began, I felt truly powerless. What if Jessica won? What if they declared me incompetent? What if I never saw freedom again? Linda found me sobbing when she visited later that evening. She held my hand and listened as I told her everything. Martha, listen to me, she said firmly. That woman is scared. She knows you're going to win in court, so she's trying to cut you off at the knees. Don't let her get in your head. You're stronger than her. You always have been. Her words calmed me, but only a little. Because deep down, I knew Linda was right. Jessica wasn't scared of me. She was scared of losing control. And people like her? They fought dirty when they felt cornered. The next week was a blur of physical therapy and legal meetings. Mr. Harris assured me we had a strong case, but he also warned me again. Jessica wouldn't stop. She would try to destroy me before this ever made it to trial. And he was right, because one night as I was preparing to sleep, a nurse rushed into my room looking frantic. "Martha," she said breathlessly, "your son is here. He's demanding to see you. He says it's urgent." My heart pounded. Daniel. I hadn't seen him since the night of the fall. For a moment, I considered refusing. But some part of me still longed to hear his voice, to believe maybe, just maybe, he had come to apologize. So I agreed. The door opened. Daniel stepped inside. His face was pale, his eyes tired, but there was no warmth in them. "Mom," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. "Daniel." There was a long silence. Then, finally, he spoke. "You need to drop this lawsuit." The words hit me like a punch. My voice trembled. "You came here to threaten me?" His jaw tightened. "Jessica's right. You're not thinking clearly. This will destroy our family. It'll ruin us. Please, just let it go." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced myself to stay strong. "You left me on the floor, Daniel. Hours. Do you even realize what you did?" His eyes flickered, guilt flashing for just a second. But then his expression hardened again. "You'll regret this," he said flatly. "If you go through with it, you won't have a son anymore." The words cut deeper than any knife. He turned and walked out, leaving me shattered. But his threat didn't break me. It forged me, because in that moment I realized something painful but true. I had already lost my son. The boy I raised was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And if I had nothing left to lose, then I had everything to fight for. I wiped my tears, clenched my fists, and whispered to myself, "They think I'm weak. They think they can silence me. But they're wrong." The lawsuit wasn't just happening. It was going to be a war. And I was ready. But I didn't know yet that Jessica had one more weapon up her sleeve. One that would shake me to my core and make me question everything I thought I knew about my own family. After Daniel's visit, the hospital room felt colder. His words echoed in my head like a cruel song I couldn't turn off. "If you go through with it, you won't have a son anymore." The truth was, I didn't have him anymore. I hadn't for years. Jessica had chipped away at his love for me until there was nothing left but obedience to her. And he let it happen. That boy I once carried in my arms, the boy who promised he'd take care of me when I grew old, was gone. Still, his warning stuck with me. Not because I feared losing him, but because of the way he said it. Cold. Final. It was almost as if he knew something I didn't. And I was about to find out exactly what that was. 2 days later, Mr. Harris came back with paperwork. "We're officially filing," he said, placing a thick folder on the table by my bed. "We're suing for elder neglect, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and reckless endangerment. They'll be served within a week." The words gave me a strange sense of power. For the first time, it felt real. They couldn't ignore me anymore. They would have to face what they'd done. But that evening, as the sun dipped below the hospital windows, the storm broke. The nurse came in holding an envelope. "This was just delivered for you," she said, handing it over. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a petition, filed by Jessica, requesting guardianship over me. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just trying to silence me. She was trying to take control of my entire life. If the court granted her guardianship, she would control my finances, my medical decisions, even where I lived. I would become a prisoner, stripped of all independence. Tears blurred my vision. At the bottom of the petition was Daniel's signature, right next to Jessica's. My own son was trying to take away my freedom. The nurse frowned when she saw my face pale. "Are you all right, Mrs. Miller?" I forced myself to nod, though inside I was crumbling. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Thank you." When she left, I clutched that paper in my hands, the betrayal slicing deeper than anything before. A lawsuit was one thing. A guardianship petition was another. They were trying to erase me completely. I called Linda. My voice broke as I explained what I had just read. She went silent for a moment, Then her voice rose sharp and furious. Those monsters. Martha, listen to me. You cannot let them win. We'll fight this. I'll call Harris tonight. He'll know what to do. True to her word, Mr. Harris showed up the next morning. When I showed him the petition, his jaw tightened. I was afraid of this, he muttered. This is their counterattack. If they get guardianship, they can dismiss your lawsuit. They'll argue you're not mentally competent to pursue it. That's why they sent that social worker. They're building a case to paint you as incapable. My chest tightened. Can they win? He looked me in the eye. Not if we fight back hard. We'll get your doctors to testify that you're of sound mind. We'll bring in witnesses. But Martha, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. They're going to drag your name through the mud. I swallowed hard. Ugly didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was silence. What scared me was doing nothing and letting them win. Then we fight, I said firmly. But Jessica wasn't finished. That night, Linda came rushing into my hospital room, her face pale. Martha, you're not going to believe this. She pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. Jessica had already started. There on Facebook was a long, venomous post written by her. She painted me as an unstable, bitter old woman who was trying to destroy her own family. She claimed I was lashing out because I was jealous of her. She even accused me of faking my injury. And Daniel? He had shared the post with a comment that crushed my heart, sad but true. I stared at the glowing screen, my vision blurring with tears. My own son had put his name to that lie. Within hours, comments poured in. Neighbors, acquaintances, people from church. Some defended me, but many sided with Jessica, swallowing her poison whole. Words like selfish, crazy, ungrateful old bat filled the screen. The humiliation was unbearable. It wasn't enough for her to try to control me in court. She wanted to destroy me publicly too. Linda hugged me as I cried. Let her run her mouth, she said. The truth will come out in court. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you break. But it was hard not to break. For days, I felt like the whole world was against me. Every beep of my phone made my chest tighten, afraid of another cruel message. I avoided looking at social media altogether. But one night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside me. I remembered who I was. I wasn't some helpless old woman. I was Martha Miller. I had fought harder battles than this. And if Jessica thought she could bully me into silence, she had underestimated me. So I dried my tears, clenched my jaw, and made a vow. If she wanted a war, then a war she would get. When Mr. Harris came the next morning, I told him I wanted to proceed, not just with the lawsuit, but also to counter their guardianship petition. I'm not just going to defend myself, I said. I'm going to show everyone exactly who they are. He smiled faintly. That's the spirit. But deep down, I knew the road ahead was going to be brutal. And I was right. Because just when I thought I had prepared myself for everything Jessica could throw at me, she revealed a weapon I never saw coming. A secret she had been holding on to for years. A secret about my past. One that had the power to destroy me in court before I even had the chance to fight back. The first court date came faster than I expected. Mr. Harris had warned me the guardianship petition would be heard quickly. It was urgent, he said, because it involved questions of my independence and mental state. I was wheeled into that courtroom with my cane resting at my side, my body weak, but my spirit sharp. The room smelled of polished wood and dust, the air heavy with tension. On one side sat me, Mr. Harris, and Linda for support. On the other, Daniel and Jessica, their lawyer perched smugly beside them. Jessica looked radiant as always, her hair perfect, her smile calculated. Daniel couldn't even look at me. He stared at the table, jaw tight, his hands clasped as if he was bracing himself. The judge, a stern woman with steel gray hair, entered the room. Everyone stood, then sat again as the proceedings began. Jessica's lawyer wasted no time. He painted a picture of me as a frail, unstable woman who couldn't care for herself. He spoke of my emotional instability, my reckless behavior, and how my injury proved I wasn't safe on my own. He said Daniel and Jessica were only trying to protect me by seeking guardianship. I wanted to laugh. Protect me? They had left me broken on the floor for hours. But I kept silent, My fists clenched under the table. Then Jessica stood. Your Honor, she began sweetly, I want what's best for Martha. She's had difficulties. She's struggled for years. We've tried to help, but she doesn't see it. She resents me for stepping in, but someone has to take responsibility. Her voice wavered just enough to sound convincing. To anyone who didn't know her, she might have looked like a saint. But then came the twist. She pulled a folder from her bag and handed it to her lawyer, who passed it to the judge. I didn't want to bring this up, she said softly, her eyes flicking toward me, but I feel I have no choice. The court needs to know the truth. My heart pounded. What was she talking about? The judge opened the folder, her eyes scanning the pages. These, Jessica's lawyer announced, are medical records from 30 years ago. Records that show Martha Miller was once admitted to a psychiatric facility for depression and suicidal thoughts. The room went silent. My breath caught in my chest. It was true. 30 years ago, after Daniel's father left, I fell into a deep depression. I was alone, broke, raising a toddler with no support. The weight was too much, and I broke. I checked myself into a facility for 2 weeks. It saved my life. Without it, I wouldn't have survived. But to Jessica, it was ammunition. Your Honor, she continued, her voice dripping with false pity. Martha has a history of mental instability. We're worried she's relapsing. Her accusations against us are wild and unfair, and now she's dragging us to court. This isn't about justice, it's about her condition. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout the truth, that I had gotten help, that I had rebuilt myself, that I had worked for decades without another incident. But my voice caught in my throat. Daniel still wouldn't look at me. His silence was the deepest betrayal of all. Mr. Harris rose, his tone calm but firm. Your Honor, these records are over 30 years old. They are irrelevant to Mrs. Miller's current state. Her doctors will testify that she is of sound mind today. This is a clear attempt to smear her character to gain control of her life. The judge frowned, her eyes narrowing at Jessica. We'll hear from her current doctors before making any determination. Relief washed through me, but it was fragile. The damage was done. Jessica had planted a seed of doubt. And in court, seeds of doubt could grow like weeds. Afterward, in the hallway, Linda hugged me tightly. Don't you dare let that woman make you ashamed, she whispered fiercely. You got help when you needed it. That's strength, not weakness. I nodded, though my heart was heavy. The shame of my past, dragged into the light, burned inside me. But Linda was right. I had survived then, and I would survive now. Mr. Harris pulled me aside. This is just the beginning. Jessica's going to dig up everything she can find. Be ready for more. But don't worry, we'll counter everything. Truth is on our side. Truth. That word gave me comfort. But comfort wouldn't last long. That night, back in my hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind replayed Jessica's words over and over. Mental instability, relapsing, suicidal, and then, around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a picture of me, taken through my hospital window. The caption read, "Old women shouldn't pick fights they can't win." The glow of my phone screen lit up my face as I stared at the message. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. The picture was grainy, but unmistakable. It was me lying in my hospital bed, taken from outside the window. Whoever sent it had been close. Too close. My breath quickened. My heart pounded in my ears. I glanced toward the window, half expecting to see someone still standing there in the shadows. But when I pulled back the curtain, the courtyard below was empty. Just still night air and the faint hum of traffic in the distance. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on me. The nurse came in moments later, her voice cheerful. "Everything all right, Mrs. Miller?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Yes, just couldn't sleep. I didn't show her the phone. Not yet. Something told me this was bigger than a prank. If I involved the wrong people, it could backfire. But deep inside, I knew who was behind it. Jessica. It had her venom all over it. The timing was too perfect. First the court ambush with my past, now this. She wanted me scared. She wanted me silenced. And for a moment, I almost let the fear win. But then I remembered lying on that floor, begging for help. I remembered Daniel's words, "You'll regret this." And I knew, no matter how much they tried to frighten me, I wasn't backing down. Still, I wasn't foolish. I needed evidence. So I saved the message, locked my phone, and the next morning, I showed it to Mr. Harris and Linda when they arrived. Mr. Harris's brow furrowed as he examined the photo. "This is serious. This isn't just intimidation. It could qualify as harassment or even stalking. Did you see anyone outside your window?" I shook my head. "No, but I know it was them." Linda's eyes blazed with fury. "Jessica's crossed the line. We need to show the judge this." But Harris held up a hand. "Not yet. If we bring this in without proof of who sent it, it'll look like speculation. We'll trace the number, build a stronger case. In the meantime, Martha, be careful. Don't go anywhere alone." His words were meant to reassure me, but they chilled me instead. Be careful, as if danger was stalking my every step. That night, I hardly slept. Every creak of the building made me jump. Every shadow on the wall looked like a figure watching me. When I finally drifted off, nightmares filled my mind. Jessica's face twisted with laughter, Daniel turning his back, a locked door slamming shut behind me. The next morning, the nurse wheeled me into the hospital garden for some fresh air. The sun was warm, the flowers bright, but I couldn't relax. I kept scanning the courtyard, searching for any sign of someone lurking. And then I saw him, a tall man in a dark hoodie, standing just beyond the fence, watching me. My breath caught in my throat. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the nurse asked, following my gaze. But by the time she turned her head, the man was gone. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but deep down I knew it wasn't. That night, another message came. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a single line of text. "Drop the lawsuit, or next time, we won't just watch." I gasped, covering my mouth. My hands shook so violently that I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was a threat. The next morning, I showed it to Mr. Harris. His expression hardened. "This is dangerous," he said. "We're going to the police." Now, at the police station, an officer took down my statement and examined the messages. He promised they'd trace the number and increase security around my hospital room. But even as he spoke, I saw doubt in his eyes. To him, I was just another old woman claiming to be harassed by her family. When I returned to the hospital, Jessica was waiting in the hallway. She leaned casually against the wall, her arms folded, that sly smile on her lips. "Rough night?" she asked sweetly. I froze, my blood running cold. She knew. She knew. And yet she said it so casually, as if she hadn't just threatened me with her little game. I wanted to scream at her, to accuse her outright, but Mr. Harris's warning echoed in my mind. "Without proof, it's just your word against hers." So instead, I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and walked past her without saying a word. Her voice followed me down the hall. "Careful, Martha. Old bones break so easily." The venom in her tone made my stomach turn. That night, as I lay in bed, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. I was fighting for my life. And the scariest part? I didn't know how far Jessica, or even Daniel, was willing to go to make sure I never made it to court. But I was about to find out. Because the very next day, my hospital bed was empty when Linda arrived. I was gone. Linda's voice cracked as she shouted at the nurse's station. "What do you mean she's gone? Martha can't just walk out of here. She's injured. She needs help." The nurse on duty stammered, flipping through papers. I don't know. Her bed was empty during morning rounds. There's no record of a discharge, no paperwork signed. It's like she just vanished. The words sent chills down Linda's spine. Martha had been weak, barely able to walk without her cane. There was no way she could have left the hospital on her own. By the time Mr. Harris arrived, the floor was in chaos. Staff searched every hallway, every waiting area, even the cafeteria. Security checked the cameras. The footage made Linda's stomach drop. At 5:12 a.m., two men in hospital scrubs pushed Martha's bed down the corridor. Their faces were hidden behind surgical masks and caps. To anyone passing by, it looked like a routine patient transfer. But the camera caught something chilling. Martha's hand gripping the bed rail, knuckles white, as though she was holding on for dear life. Then gone. Out of sight. They took her, Linda whispered, her hands trembling. God help her, they took her. Mr. Harris clenched his jaw, his voice low and steady. This isn't just about a lawsuit anymore. This is criminal. The hospital scrambled to contact police. An investigation was launched, but the trail was already cold. Whoever orchestrated this had planned it carefully. Meanwhile, I woke up groggy, my head pounding. The last thing I remembered was a sharp sting in my arm as I drifted to sleep the night before. Now I was in a dark room, the air damp and stale. My bed was gone. My cane was gone. Even my phone had been taken. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, sluggish, as if I'd been drugged. The faint sound of dripping water echoed somewhere nearby. Fear clawed at my chest. The door creaked open. Jessica stepped inside. Her smile was cold, her eyes glinting in the dim light. Morning, Martha. I was worried you might not wake up. I struggled to sit up, my voice hoarse. What have you done? She crouched beside me, brushing imaginary dust from her perfect sleeve. You were becoming a problem. Talking to lawyers, running to the police, dragging our names through the mud. You left me no choice. Where am I? I rasped. Her smile widened. Somewhere you can't cause trouble. My heart raced. This is kidnapping. You'll go to prison for this. Jessica laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. Oh, Martha, who do you think they'll believe? An old woman with a history of depression? Or me, the devoted daughter-in-law who's just trying to take care of her family? Tears stung my eyes, but rage burned hotter. You're a monster. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Maybe, but monsters don't lose. Then she stood and walked out, locking the door behind her. I sat in the darkness, my body weak, but my mind sharper than ever. If she thought she'd broken me, she was wrong. I'd been through worse. I survived heartbreak, abandonment, poverty. I survived being left on the floor by her and Daniel. I'd survived this too. But as the hours passed, hunger gnawed at my stomach and my strength dwindled. The walls pressed in, the silence suffocating. I was alone, powerless, with no way to call for help. Until I heard a sound outside the door. A key turning in the lock. The door opened slowly, and standing there, holding a flashlight, was not Jessica. It was Daniel. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he whispered, Mom, we don't have much time. You need to get up. Now. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. My son, my own Daniel, standing in the doorway of that damp, windowless room, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Daniel. My voice cracked, weak from thirst. What are you doing here? He glanced over his shoulder, his hand trembling as he shut the door behind him. There's no time to explain. You need to get up. We have to move before she comes back. I tried to sit up, but my body protested. Every muscle ached. My legs felt like stone and my head spun. I can't. I don't have the strength. He cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. Damn it, Mom. Why didn't you just drop it? You had to go after us, didn't you? The sting of his words hit harder than any blow. After you? I whispered. You left me on the floor to die. And now this. I gestured weakly at the room around us. This is your doing too. His jaw tightened, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't want it to go this far. I swear. Jessica, she pushed for it. Said you were going to ruin everything. But I didn't think, he stopped himself, shaking his head. Look, I can't undo what's already happened. But I can get you out of here. If she finds me helping you, it's over for both of us. My heart twisted. My son. My blood. Even now, he couldn't take full responsibility. He spoke of Jessica pulling the strings, but his silence had been just as deadly. Why now? I asked, my voice sharp despite my weakness. Why save me now, when you could have stopped this before it even started? For a moment, his face cracked, guilt, raw and heavy, flashed across his features. Because I can't watch her finish what she started. Not to you. Not when you're my mother. His words cut through me, a mix of hope and heartbreak. He knelt, slipping an arm around my shoulders to lift me. His touch was clumsy, hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he had the right to hold me anymore. Come on, he muttered, his breath ragged. We don't have long. We stumbled through a narrow corridor, his flashlight casting shaky beams against the damp walls. My legs dragged, my body screaming for rest, but I forced myself forward. Every step was survival. Then, just as we reached a stairwell, voices echoed above us. Jessica's voice, sharp, furious, cutting through the silence. Daniel? What are you doing down there? Daniel froze, his grip on me tightening. The flashlight beam wobbled as his hand shook. Keep quiet, he whispered. But it was too late. Her footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs with terrifying calm. Daniel, she said, her tone cold but steady. I hope you're not making a mistake. I clung to him, my heart pounding. For a split second, I saw fear in his eyes, the same fear I'd seen in my own. Then Jessica appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her silhouette framed in the dim light. She held something in her hand. A gun. She raised it slowly, her smile like ice. Well, she said softly, isn't this touching? My breath caught in my throat. My son was between me and a woman holding a loaded weapon. Jessica's eyes locked on Daniel. Step aside. Now. Daniel's hand trembled on my shoulder, but he didn't move. His voice was low, steady, but laced with fear. No. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jessica tilted her head, her smile widening. Then I guess I'll have to decide which one of you I shoot first. The basement was silent except for the sound of dripping water and my own ragged breathing. Jessica's hand was steady, the gun pointed at us like she'd done this before. Step aside, Daniel, she said again, her voice calm, too calm. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Daniel's body stiffened. He pulled me closer, shielding me with his own frame. For a moment, I almost believed he might truly stand against her. My son, my boy, finally choosing me. But Jessica's eyes glinted in the dark, cold and confident. You think I won't do it? You've always been weak, Daniel. Always needing me to make the decisions for you. This is no different. I felt Daniel's heartbeat hammering against me, his chest rising and falling too fast. His grip on my arm tightened. Then, something changed in his face. Resolve. No, he said, voice low but firm. I'm done letting you control everything. She's my mother. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. The words cracked through the air like lightning. For the first time, Jessica's smile faltered. But only for a second. Fine, she hissed. The gun went off. The sound exploded through the basement, sharp and deafening. My body jerked, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if I had been hit. My ears rang, the world spinning. Then I saw Daniel collapse. Daniel! I screamed, my voice breaking as he fell to his knees, his hand pressed to his side where blood was already seeping through his shirt. He gasped, struggling to stay upright. Mom, run. But where could I run? My legs were weak, my body frail. Even if I wanted to leave him, I couldn't. And I wouldn't. Jessica lowered the gun slightly, her eyes narrowing as she stepped closer. See what you made me do? If you had just stayed quiet, Martha, none of this would have happened. My fury ignited, hot and unyielding. For so long I had been powerless, left on the floor, abandoned, silenced. But watching my son bleed because of her, that broke something inside me. I grabbed the flashlight Daniel had dropped. My hand shook, but my grip tightened. Jessica tilted her head, amused. What's that supposed to do? Enough! I spat, my voice shaking with rage. I swung the flashlight with every ounce of strength I had left. It connected with a sickening crack against her wrist. The gun clattered to the floor, skidding across the cement. Jessica screamed, clutching her arm. For the first time, her composure slipped, replaced by raw anger. I dove for the gun, my body hitting the floor hard. Pain shot through me, but adrenaline carried me forward. My fingers brushed the weapon, inches away. A hand yanked me back. Jessica's nails dug into my shoulder, ripping me away from it. You stupid old hag, she shrieked. We struggled on the floor, her strength overpowering mine. But then, Daniel, with a groan of agony, he kicked the gun toward me. His face twisted in pain, but his eyes, oh, his eyes, burned with determination. I snatched the gun. My hands trembled so badly I could barely keep it steady. Jessica froze. her eyes widening as she saw it aimed directly at her. "Put it down, Martha," she said, her voice low, almost coaxing. "You don't have it in you." I stared at her, my breath ragged, the weight of the weapon heavy in my hands. She was right. I had never held a gun in my life. My hand shook so violently the barrel wavered. But then I looked at Daniel, bleeding out on the floor. I thought of the night I had begged for help after my fall, of being left there, helpless, of being silenced, ignored, treated as though my life had no value. Something inside me hardened. I steadied my grip, my voice sharp as a blade. "Try me." The room fell silent. Jessica's smirk returned, though thinner this time, edged with unease. And then, sirens wailed in the distance. Jessica's eyes darted toward the sound. Her mask slipped, panic flashing across her face. Someone had called the police. But would they get here in time? The sound of sirens grew louder, rattling the old basement walls. Jessica's eyes darted around like a trapped animal, her calm mask peeling away with every wail. I still had the gun in my hands, my arms trembling under its weight, but I refused to lower it. My breathing was ragged, my palms slick with sweat. Daniel groaned beside me, clutching his bleeding side. Jessica hissed, "Give it to me." Now. Her voice was no longer composed. It was desperate. She lunged forward, but I steadied my grip. "Don't move," I said, the word shaky but firm. Her eyes narrowed. "You won't shoot me. You don't have it in you, Martha." But this time, her voice wavered. The sirens cut off. Car doors slammed shut above us. Boots pounded against the ground. A muffled shout echoed. "Police! Open up!" Jessica's face drained of color. Daniel coughed, his lips pale. "Mom, they're here." His voice cracked, weak but hopeful. I tried to keep my eyes on Jessica, but my heart raced so violently I thought it might stop. She stepped back, calculating. I could almost see the plan forming in her eyes. And then she screamed, "Help! Down here! She's got a gun!" My blood ran cold. The door burst open, and 2 officers stormed down the stairs. Their flashlights sliced through the darkness, blinding me. "Drop the weapon," one of them shouted. "No," I cried, panicked. "She's lying. She." But Jessica was already playing her part. Tears streamed down her face, her voice breaking with practiced hysteria. She snapped. "She attacked us. My husband tried to stop her, but she shot him. Please, help us." The officers hesitated, their beams darting between me, the gun shaking in my hands, and Daniel writhing in blood on the floor. "Drop it, ma'am," the other officer barked, his weapon trained on me. Daniel tried to lift his head, his voice weak. "No, she's lying." "Mom didn't." His words dissolved into a cough of blood. Jessica fell to her knees, clutching at the officer's legs. "Please, don't let her hurt anyone else. She's dangerous." I wanted to scream, to shout the truth so loud that no one could deny it. But my throat locked. My body trembled. All they saw was an old woman with a gun. Slowly, I lowered it to the ground. My fingers slipped away from the cold metal, and it clattered against the floor. In an instant, an officer rushed forward, yanking my arms behind my back. The cuffs bit into my wrists. "No," I screamed, my voice raw. "You don't understand. She's the one. She shot my son." But Jessica's sobs drowned me out. "Thank you. Thank you," she whispered to the officers, her trembling hands clinging to their sleeves like she was the victim. Daniel's weak voice cut through the chaos. Stop she didn't, but his words faded, his eyes fluttering shut. Panic seized me. "Daniel." "No, stay awake." The officers shouted for a medic, their radios crackling. More boots thundered down the stairs. And through it all, Jessica looked at me. Just for a second, behind her tears, she gave me a smile. A cruel, victorious smile. It was the smile of someone who thought she had won. But what she didn't know, what she could never have predicted, was that this was only the beginning. The metal chair was hard and unforgiving, the kind that made your back ache after only a few minutes. The room smelled faintly of bleach, and the buzzing fluorescent light above my head flickered like it was mocking me. My wrists were raw from the handcuffs, though they'd finally taken them off once I was seated. A young officer, no older than 30, sat across from me with a notepad. His nameplate read Officer Miller. He had that tight, rehearsed look on his face, the one that said he thought he already knew the truth. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his tone even, "we need you to walk us through what happened tonight. From the beginning." I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. "It was Jessica. She had the gun. She shot my son." Miller's pen tapped against the paper. "The woman we spoke to upstairs says otherwise. She claims you attacked her, that she tried to protect her husband from you, but you snapped. She says your son got caught in the crossfire." I shook my head so hard my vision blurred. "No, she's lying. She's been lying for years. She left me to suffer once before after I fell. Do you understand what kind of woman she is? She doesn't care about anyone but herself." Miller's jaw tightened. "Do you have any evidence of that?" The question hit me like a slap. Evidence. Proof. For so long, I'd lived with words, promises, betrayals, memories. None of that mattered in this room. All they wanted was something solid. My hands trembled against the cold metal table. "My son," I whispered. "Daniel. He knows the truth. He tried to tell you. He said it before he passed out." Miller didn't react. He scribbled something on his pad, his eyes unreadable. I felt my chest tighten. "Please, just talk to him. He'll tell you." The door opened, and a tall woman in plain clothes stepped in. She wore no uniform, but the way Miller straightened told me she outranked him. She had sharp eyes, ones that didn't miss much. "Detective Harris," she introduced herself, sliding into the chair beside him. Her voice was calm but firm. "I'll take it from here." Miller nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For a moment, she just studied me. Her gaze wasn't unkind, but it wasn't trusting either. "You've been through a lot tonight," she said finally. "I need you to be very clear with me. Why would your daughter-in-law want to hurt you?" The words tumbled out of me like a dam breaking. I told her everything. How Jessica had manipulated Daniel for years, how she refused to take me to the hospital after my fall, how she isolated me, controlled every part of my life, and finally, how she pointed the gun at us tonight. By the time I finished, my throat burned and my hands were clenched tight in my lap. Detective Harris didn't write anything down. She just leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "That's quite a story," she said softly. "It's the truth," I whispered, my chest heaving. "I swear it on my life." She tapped the table lightly, thinking. "Here's the problem, Mrs. Thompson. Right now, all we have is her word against yours. And to the officers who first responded, it looked like you were the one holding the gun." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. Then her expression shifted, just a little, almost like she'd seen something others hadn't. "Still," she said slowly, "there are inconsistencies in her story, things that don't quite add up." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Detective Harris stood, smoothing down her jacket. "I mean, it's too early to say anything, but I'll be looking into it." She paused at the door, glancing back at me. "Don't lose hope just yet." And then she was gone. I sat there, the silence pressing in on me, torn between despair and a tiny flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, faith. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, someone didn't believe Jessica. But while I clung to that flicker of hope, upstairs, Jessica was already weaving a tighter web, one that could trap me forever if I wasn't careful. The walls of the police station seemed alive with whispers. Phones rang, radios buzzed, and the occasional bark of an officer broke the monotony. Somewhere in that building, Jessica sat in comfort, twisting her version of events into a golden thread for anyone willing to listen. Meanwhile, I was still in that suffocating interrogation room, waiting alone. I wasn't allowed to see Daniel, and every second that passed without word of him clawed at my chest. The last I saw of him was his pale, bloodied face, his eyes fluttering shut. He tried to speak for me. He tried to tell the truth. But would he survive long enough to repeat it? I closed my eyes, my mind drifting unwillingly back to the past, to the night of my fall. I remembered lying there on the cold kitchen floor, pain ripping through my body as Jessica's indifferent voice echoed above me, "You're fine. Stop being dramatic." She'd left me there, broken and desperate. If not for a neighbor's sudden visit hours later, I might not have lived to tell the tale. And now, years later, she was about to finish what she started. The door swung open. Detective Harris re-entered, carrying a slim file tucked under her arm. Her face was calm, unreadable. "Martha," she said evenly, "I need to ask you a few more questions." Jessica just gave her statement. The air seemed to thicken. I braced myself. What did she say? Harris opened the folder and skimmed the pages. According to her, you became unstable after your son refused to give you more money. She says you've been financially dependent on him for years and resented her for limiting your access. Tonight, she claims you tried to shoot her and your son was accidentally hit in the process. My stomach turned. That's a lie, I spat, my voice shaking. She knows I've been careful not to burden Daniel. And she. I stopped, remembering Harris's earlier warning. All we have is her word against yours. If I sounded too desperate, too emotional, they'd take it as proof of Jessica's version. I forced myself to take a deep breath. She's twisting everything. Please, you have to see that. Harris studied me for a long moment, her eyes sharp. Then she said something that made my heart jump. You're right about one thing. Jessica's story doesn't account for the gunshot residue. I blinked. What? Harris closed the file and leaned forward. Our forensics team swabbed both your hands. There was some residue on yours, yes, but far less than we'd expect if you'd fired the gun multiple times. Jessica, on the other hand, had none at all, which is odd. A spark lit inside me. Because she washed her hands, I said quickly. She had time before you came downstairs. She probably wiped herself clean while I was holding the gun. Harris didn't answer right away. She tapped her fingers against the folder. It's a possibility, but it's not enough to clear you, not yet. My chest tightened again. Hope was there, just out of reach, but fragile. If Jessica's lies held stronger than my truth, I could still lose everything. Where's my son? I asked finally, my voice breaking. Is he alive? Harris's face softened, if only slightly. He's in surgery. They're trying to stabilize him. I pressed a hand to my mouth, tears stinging my eyes. My Daniel, my only son, was fighting for his life, while his wife was upstairs weaving lies. Harris stood. I'll be honest, Martha. Jessica's a convincing woman. The officers upstairs believe her. The neighbors who've known her described her as polite, devoted to her husband. If we're going to uncover the truth, I'll need something solid. Something no one can spin. And with that, she left me again, her footsteps fading down the hall. I sat there in silence, my thoughts spinning. Evidence. Proof. There had to be something Jessica overlooked. Upstairs, Jessica was already painting her masterpiece. She sat in a comfortable office chair, a box of tissue strategically placed at her side. Her mascara smudged just enough to appear authentic. Every now and then, she dabbed at her eyes, her voice trembling in all the right places. She's been struggling for a long time, Jessica whispered, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I tried to help her. We both did, but she hated me for it. Hated that I wanted Daniel to stand on his own without constantly giving in to her demands. One officer nodded sympathetically, jotting notes. Another frowned slightly but said nothing. Jessica sniffled, lowering her gaze. I begged her to put the gun down. I told her Daniel and I loved her, that we just wanted her safe. But she wouldn't listen. She fired, and she let out a sob, pressing the tissue to her face. She nearly killed him. Her shoulders shook, but inside, behind that fragile mask, she was steady as stone. The officers murmured words of comfort, reassurances that she wasn't alone, that justice would prevail. But Jessica knew better. Justice wasn't about truth. It was about who told the better story. And right now, her story was flawless. Back in the interrogation room, I sat hunched over, my thoughts clawing at me like wild animals. If Daniel didn't wake up, if he couldn't testify, their word against mine would lean heavily in Jessica's favor. I needed something. Anything. Then, the door burst open again, startling me. It was Officer Miller, the younger one. His expression was tight, urgent. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, glancing over his shoulder before stepping inside. "I probably shouldn't be here, but I need to tell you something." I straightened in my chair, my pulse racing. "What is it?" He lowered his voice. "We just received an update from the hospital. Your son's in critical condition, but he's alive. They managed to stop the bleeding for now. Tears of relief blurred my vision. Thank God. But Miller wasn't finished. He leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. And there's something else. When they brought him in, they found powder burns on his shirt. The angle of the wound suggests he wasn't shot from across the room. It looks like the gun was pressed close, like a struggle. My eyes widened. That proves it wasn't me, I breathed. I never. He raised a hand. I can't say more. But Detective Harris will want to see this. Don't give up yet. And then, just as quickly, he was gone, leaving me with a pounding heart and a fragile seed of hope. Meanwhile, Jessica wasn't done spinning her tale. She was clever, too clever. She knew that while she had the officer's sympathy, the longer Daniel lived, the greater the risk of him exposing her. So she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. Please, I'm afraid for my life. What if she gets out? What if she comes after me again? The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Don't worry, one assured her. She's not going anywhere. We'll keep you safe. Jessica gave them a grateful smile, but behind it was calculation. Every ounce of pity they gave her was another nail in my coffin. But even as she played her game, fate was shifting. Evidence was emerging. Evidence she couldn't control forever. Hours later, Detective Harris returned to me, holding a fresh file. Her face betrayed nothing, but the way she closed the door made my stomach twist. She sat across from me, opened the file, and slid a photo onto the table. It was Daniel's shirt, bloodstained, torn. But there, clear as day, were the blackened burns around the bullet hole. Mrs. Thompson, Harris said carefully, this suggests the gun was fired at close range. Closer than you were standing, according to the initial reports. My pulse quickened. Exactly. That's because Jessica shot him. She was right there. I wasn't. Harris didn't reply immediately. She studied me, her sharp eyes searching for cracks. Finally, she said, this complicates things. Jessica swore you fired from across the room. If she's lying about this, she trailed off, closing the folder with a snap. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw it, the faintest shadow of doubt in her eyes. Doubt in Jessica. Before I could speak, an officer burst into the room, his face pale. Detective, he said urgently, we've got a problem. Jessica's demanding protective custody. She claims Martha threatened to finish the job. I froze. Harris's jaw clenched. Of course she did. She turned back to me. Martha, don't say a word to anyone else. Do you understand me? Not a word. Let me handle this. And then she hurried out, leaving me in stunned silence. Jessica wasn't done. She was raising the stakes. But neither was I, because for the first time the truth had cracked her perfect story, and I was ready to use it. The night ended not with peace, but with a storm. Daniel clung to life in a hospital bed. Jessica played the role of a grieving angel upstairs, and I sat in a cold cell, the weight of injustice pressing down on me. But I wasn't broken. Not yet, because Harris had seen it, the lie, the inconsistency. And deep down, I knew. Jessica's house of cards was about to collapse. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of machines. Tubes ran from Daniel's arm. Oxygen hissed softly at his bedside. His chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a battle. I wasn't allowed to see him. Instead, I sat in the station's holding cell, staring at the gray wall, my hands trembling in my lap. Somewhere in this same building, Jessica was spinning more lies, weaving threads that could strangle me if no one cut through them. But Harris, she'd seen it. She'd seen the powder burns, the contradiction. For the first time, Jessica's story had faltered. I clung to that like a lifeline. Hours passed. The clang of footsteps echoed now and then, doors opening and shutting. Somewhere nearby, a drunk man cursed until he fell asleep on the bench across from me. Time blurred, stretching endlessly. Then, at last, the cell door creaked open. Detective Harris stood there, her expression unreadable. Come with me, she said. I followed her down the sterile corridor, my legs unsteady. She led me to a small interview room, but this time she didn't sit across from me with a file between us. She closed the door, leaned against it, and folded her arms. Daniel woke up, she said. My heart stopped. He's alive. He's weak. He's in pain. But he's alive. Harris's tone softened slightly, though her face remained serious. He tried to talk. He only managed a few words. He said, Mom didn't. And then he lost consciousness again. Tears welled in my eyes. Relief washed over me, warm and overwhelming. He tried to save me, I whispered. Even now. Harris nodded slowly. It's not a full statement, but it's something. Enough to make me take a closer look at Jessica. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then Harris leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. But Martha, I need you to understand. Jessica isn't just manipulative. She's dangerous. She knows her story is unraveling. If she realizes Daniel might expose her, she'll act fast. A chill slid through me. What do you mean, act fast? I mean she might try to finish what she started, Harris said grimly. With him or with you. My blood ran cold. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Jessica sat at Daniel's bedside, her face a mask of sorrow and devotion. She held his limp hand, stroking it gently as nurses bustled around. Sweetheart, she whispered, her voice trembling with just the right amount of grief. You're safe. I'm here. But behind her soft words, her mind was racing. He had woken up. He had spoken. She didn't know exactly what he'd said, but it was enough to rattle her. Enough to put her plan in danger. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. Don't you dare ruin this for me, Daniel. Don't you dare. Her smile returned the moment a nurse walked in, masking the venom in her voice. To everyone else, she was the picture of loyalty, a wife standing vigil by her injured husband. But inside, her patience was running out. Back at the station, Harris pulled a chair close and sat in front of me. Here's what I'm going to do, she said firmly. We'll keep Jessica under surveillance. If she tries anything, if she slips up even once, we'll catch it. But I need you to stay calm, Martha. No matter what she says, no matter what you hear, don't let her bait you. I nodded, though my insides trembled. She's already taken so much from me. I don't want to lose him too. Harris's gaze softened briefly before hardening again. Then let's not give her the chance. The following day brought a storm neither of us expected. Word spread through the hospital that Daniel had regained more strength. The doctors planned to reduce his sedation, hoping he'd be able to give a clear statement soon. Jessica was the first to hear it, and when she did, her mask of sorrow cracked. That evening, she stood in the hospital bathroom, her reflection staring back at her. She gripped the sink so hard her knuckles whitened. If Daniel talked, everything would collapse. The inheritance, the house, the sympathy she'd cultivated, all gone. She couldn't let that happen. She opened her purse. Inside, tucked neatly among tissues and lipstick, was a small vial of pills. She stared at them, her pulse quickening. One dose could push him back under. Two could stop his heart. She closed the purse slowly, her lips curling into a cold smile. Detective Harris had anticipated Jessica's desperation. That same night, Harris called the hospital, requesting Daniel be moved to a secure wing, one with cameras and limited access. But bureaucracy moved slowly. Until approval came, Jessica still had access to him. So Harris made a decision. She would visit the hospital herself. But before she could leave, she received a call that made her blood run cold. Detective, the nurse said hurriedly, Mrs. Thompson just asked us to leave her alone with her husband. She said she needed to pray with him. We were about to give her a few minutes. Don't, Harris snapped. Do not leave her alone. I'm on my way. She grabbed her coat and raced out the door. In the hospital room, Jessica sat beside Daniel, the vial hidden in her hand. She glanced toward the door. It was shut. The nurse is gone. Poor Daniel, she whispered, her tone dripping with false pity. You always were too soft. Always clinging to your mother. Even now, you can't let her go, can you? Well, I'll make this easy for both of us. She unscrewed the cap, tipping a pill into her palm. Her hand hovered over Daniel's foreline. But before she could move further, the door burst open. Jessica. Harris's voice rang out like a whip. Jessica froze. The detective strode in, eyes sharp, hand already raised in warning. Step away from him. For the first time, Jessica's mask slipped fully. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw clenched. You don't understand. He was never supposed to survive. She was supposed to take the fall, not me. The confession hung in the air, chilling and raw. But Jessica wasn't done. She clenched the vial tighter, her voice rising. If he talks, I lose everything. Do you hear me? Everything. Harris's hand inched toward her belt. Put it down, Jessica. Right now. Jessica's chest heaved. Her gaze flicked to Daniel, then back to Harris. For a moment, it looked like she might comply. But then her lips twisted into a defiant smile. No. And in one sudden motion, she lunged. Straight toward Daniel's fore. The world seemed to freeze in that moment. Harris dove forward, shouting. Nurses screamed as they rushed in from the hall. Jessica's hand hovered dangerously close to the fore line. The vial of pills still clutched tight. Daniel stirred weakly, his eyes fluttering open. Confusion clouded his face, but his lips parted. Mom didn't, he whispered again. And then chaos erupted. Harris tackled Jessica, knocking the vial from her hand. It skittered across the floor, spilling pills like tiny white stones. Jessica shrieked, thrashing wildly, her strength fueled by desperation. The nurses swarmed Daniel, checking his lines, ensuring nothing had been tampered with. I wasn't there to see it, but later, Harris told me one thing that sent shivers down my spine. As she pinned Jessica to the floor, cuffs clicking shut around her wrists, Jessica leaned in close and hissed. This isn't over. You'll regret ever crossing me. Her eyes burned with hatred, cold and bottomless. And even in chains, she smiled. Back at the station, Harris updated me in person. Jessica had been caught red-handed, the vial in her possession, her confession overheard by multiple staff. But instead of relief, I felt something else settle over me. Dread. Because Harris was right. Jessica wasn't finished. Women like her didn't stop until they had nothing left to lose. And even now I knew somehow, some way, she would find another way to strike back. That night, as I lay awake in my narrow cot, I thought of Daniel fighting for his life, of Harris risking hers to protect him, and of Jessica's cold words echoing in my head. This isn't over. And I realized she was right. The war had only just begun. The cold clang of the courtroom door was a sound I never thought I'd hear again in my life. But there I was, sitting stiffly on a wooden bench, watching as Jessica was led in through a side door in orange prison garb, her wrist shackled. She should have looked broken, beaten, defeated, but she didn't. Her chin was high, her lips curled into that same sharp smile I'd seen the night Harris tackled her in the hospital room. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, and then she tilted her head ever so slightly, as if daring me to look away. And God help me, I almost did. The gavel cracked, calling the court to order. The preliminary hearing was supposed to be simple. Jessica's attempt to harm Daniel in the hospital had been witnessed by Detective Harris, by nurses, by staff. The evidence was there. But Jessica had done what Jessica always did. She'd twisted the story. Her attorney, a smooth man in an expensive gray suit, rose to speak. Your Honor, my client is not the monster the prosecution paints her to be. She is a wife, a woman who has suffered trauma and stress. When her husband was injured, when her family was torn apart by these events, she was overwhelmed. The vial of pills found in her hand, supplements, harmless. She brought them for herself, for her nerves. The so-called confession the detective claims to have heard, misinterpreted in the chaos. An emotional outburst from a distraught spouse, not an admission of guilt. My nails dug into my palms. Supplements? Misinterpreted? He was turning reality into smoke. The judge frowned but said nothing. Jessica's lawyer pressed on, his voice smooth as silk. And let us not forget, Your Honor, the other player in this drama. The mother-in-law. A woman with a history of conflict with my client. A woman who stands to gain if my client is removed from the picture. Who is to say this isn't an elaborate attempt by her to smear my client's reputation? Whispers rippled through the courtroom. My stomach twisted. Jessica sat silent at the defense table, her face the perfect mask of grief. But when her lawyer mentioned me, she turned her head just slightly. Her lips curled into a smirk that only I could see. She was baiting me. Again. Detective Harris leaned over, whispering in my ear. Don't react. That's exactly what she wants. But it was hard. So hard. After court, Harris and I sat in her car in the parking lot. Rain drizzled down the windshield, the world outside blurred and gray. She's already planting seeds, Harris said grimly. Her lawyer's going to spin this into a circus. Sympathy for her, suspicion on you. It's the oldest trick in the book, and with the right jury, it can work. I pressed my hands to my face. What if she wins, detective? What if she gets out? Harris was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. Then we make sure she doesn't get the chance to hurt you or Daniel again. But Martha, you need to understand. This isn't just about the evidence anymore. This is about perception. And Jessica knows how to play that game better than anyone. I thought back to all the times Jessica had charmed her way into Daniel's heart, into the family, into controlling every piece of our lives. She had always known how to play her role. Sweet, innocent, misunderstood. And now she was playing it for the world. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Daniel was recovering slowly, but each step forward was fragile. He could sit up now, whisper more words, even smile weakly when I came to visit. But his body was weak and his memory patchy. Mom, he rasped one afternoon, his hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Don't let her win. My throat tightened. I won't, sweetheart. I promise you I won't. But deep down, fear gnawed at me. Because even behind bars, Jessica was still fighting. And outside the hospital, whispers were spreading. News articles called her the grieving wife. Online forums buzzed with debates. Was she a victim of stress or a cold-blooded schemer? And in the middle of it all, my name was being dragged through the mud. The jealous mother-in-law. The controlling woman who couldn't let go of her son. Maybe she's the real villain. Each headline cut deeper than the last. One night, as I sat in my small living room, the phone rang. It was Harris. Her voice was tight, urgent. Martha, I need you to listen carefully. Jessica just filed for bail. My heart stopped. Bail? But she has resources, friends, and if the judge grants it, she'll be out until trial. Harris sighed heavily. I'll fight it. I'll present every reason she's a danger. But you need to prepare yourself, because if she walks out, the first thing she'll do is come after you. I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear. My heart pounded, my breath shallow. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The bail hearing was worse than I imagined. Jessica walked in, no longer in prison orange, but in a neat navy dress. Her hair brushed, her makeup subtle. She looked like the picture of dignity, like a woman wronged by the world. Her lawyer spoke passionately. Your Honor, my client has deep roots in this community. She has no prior record. She poses no threat. She deserves the chance to await her trial at home, surrounded by her support system. When Harris stood to counter, her words were sharp and fierce. Your Honor, this woman was caught attempting to tamper with her husband's line. She was found with a vial of unknown pills. She openly admitted. But the defense interrupted smoothly. An emotional moment, not a confession. And as for the pills? Tested. Harmless vitamins. I felt my stomach drop. Vitamins? Had she really twisted it that far? The judge drummed his fingers on the bench. His gaze shifted from Harris to Jessica, who sat with her hands folded neatly, her eyes downcast, her expression angelic. Bail granted, he said finally, with conditions. Home monitoring. No direct contact with the victim. The gavel struck. Jessica turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine across the courtroom. And though her lips didn't move, I knew exactly what she was saying. I'm coming for you. That night, Harris insisted on driving me home. The silence between us was heavy, my fear palpable. When we pulled up to my house, Harris turned to me. Lock your doors. Don't go anywhere alone. And if you see her, if you so much as think she's near, you call me. Immediately. I nodded, but my hands trembled so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. The house felt colder than usual, the shadows deeper. Every creak made me jump. For hours, I sat in the dark, staring at the front door, waiting. And then, a sound, a soft scrape against the window. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Another scrape. Then a whisper. Martha. Her voice. Jessica's voice. I crept toward the window, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I pulled back the curtain just slightly, and there she was, standing outside in the dark, her ankle monitor blinking faintly, her face lit by the pale glow of the street lamp. And she was smiling. The night Jessica appeared outside my window, whispering my name like a ghost, something inside me shattered. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to have that kind of freedom. And yet there she stood, her face pale and twisted with that smile I had come to fear more than anything. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then her whisper sharpened. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the phone, dialing Detective Harris. But before the line even connected, Jessica was gone, her shadow disappearing into the night. When Harris arrived minutes later, I was still shaking, staring at the empty spot where Jessica had stood. She violated bail, Harris growled, scanning the yard with a flashlight. We'll report it. We'll nail her for this. But Jessica was slippery. Every time Harris tried to pin her down, Jessica slipped through a crack. Her lawyer spun stories, twisted facts, claimed misunderstandings. And somehow Jessica stayed free. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. Daniel's recovery was steady, but fragile. He was finally strong enough to walk short distances with help, but his memory still had holes. Some days he'd smile at me and remember everything. Our favorite Christmas mornings, the fishing trips with his dad. Other days, he'd look at me with blank eyes and ask, Mom, who are you again? But no matter what, whenever Jessica's name came up, his face tightened with something like fear. Even without remembering every detail, some part of him knew what she was capable of. I stayed by his side every chance I could, but even the hospital wasn't safe. Jessica hovered like a shadow. She sent flowers, notes, even tried to charm the nurses. Each time, Harris intercepted, building a thicker file of violations. Still, the court dragged its feet. Trials take time, and Jessica knew how to use time to her advantage. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, I returned home to find my front porch littered with papers. I bent down, my stomach sinking as I picked them up. They were copies of court filings, lawsuits. Jessica was suing me. Defamation, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Each page was stamped official, her lawyer's name in bold at the top. I sank onto the porch steps, the papers shaking in my hands. She was turning everything upside down. She wasn't just trying to destroy me emotionally. She was going after me financially, legally. By the time Harris pulled up that night, I was still sitting there, papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. She wants to bleed you dry, Harris said grimly, gathering them up. This isn't about winning in court anymore. It's about war. And for the first time, I felt it deep in my bones. This woman would not stop until I was ruined. The trial finally began 6 months later. The courthouse was packed, the air electric. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing. Headlines screamed about the battle between mother-in-law and widow. Inside, the tension was unbearable. On one side, Jessica sat poised and elegant, dressed in soft gray, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked like a grieving saint. On the other, I sat with Harris and our lawyer, my hands folded tightly in my lap, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break. The prosecution laid out the evidence. The vial of pills, the attempt on Daniel's 4, Jessica's whispered threats, her bail violations. Harris testified with steady clarity, her words cutting through Jessica's lies. Then it was Jessica's turn. Her lawyer painted her as the victim, a woman targeted by a controlling mother-in-law who couldn't accept that her son had chosen another woman. They painted me as bitter, manipulative, even dangerous. And Jessica sold it. She wept on the stand, her voice trembling as she spoke about her love for Daniel, about how misunderstood she was. She even claimed she'd been the one trying to save him when I had panicked and misinterpreted her actions. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Some looked sympathetic. My stomach twisted. Was she winning them over? Then came the day Daniel was called to testify. He walked slowly into the courtroom, leaning on a cane, his face pale but determined. The entire room hushed as he took the stand. My heart ached. I wanted to protect him from this, to shield him from Jessica's venom. But this was his choice. The lawyer asked simple questions first. His name, his recovery, his relationship with me. Then came the question everyone waited for. Mr. Caldwell, do you remember what happened the night you were hospitalized? Daniel's brow furrowed. For a moment, silence stretched. Then, slowly, painfully, he nodded. Yes, I remember. His voice was soft but clear. He glanced at me, then at Jessica. I remember falling. I remember begging them to take me to the hospital. And I remember Jessica refusing. She didn't call for help. She didn't care. If Mom hadn't come, his voice broke, I wouldn't be alive right now. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Jessica's face went rigid. But Daniel wasn't finished. I also remember waking up in the hospital. And I remember Jessica standing over me with a vial in her hand. She said he swallowed hard. She said it would be better if I just slipped away. That no one would miss me. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Jurors exchanged shocked looks. The judge called for order. And for the first time, Jessica's mask cracked. Her face twisted, her eyes wide, her lips curled into a snarl. You liar, she screamed, leaping to her feet. You ungrateful liar. Bailiffs rushed to restrain her, but the damage was done. Her carefully crafted image shattered in an instant. The trial dragged on for weeks, but from that moment, the tide had turned. Evidence mounted, witnesses testified, and Jessica's lies crumbled. When the verdict was finally read, I held my breath. Guilty, on all counts. Jessica was sentenced to years in prison. The lawsuits she'd filed against me were dismissed as frivolous. And when the dust settled, she was left with nothing but debt. The house she once flaunted? Gone. The luxury car she paraded around in? Repossessed. Her so-called friends? Vanished. She had tried to destroy me. But in the end, she destroyed herself. Months later, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew crisp, Daniel and I sat on the porch together. He was stronger now, walking without a cane, his smile brighter than I'd seen in years. You saved me, Mom, he said softly, his hand covering mine. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I looked out at the horizon, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I didn't just save you, I whispered. We saved each other. Because through betrayal, heartbreak, and the darkest nights, we had found our way back to the one thing Jessica could never take from us. Love. And as I sat there, holding my son's hand, I knew one truth above all. They refused to take me to the hospital after I fell. So I took them to court and left them with nothing but debt.